And there we go. Cool. So thank you so much for being here. First off, who are you and what are you running for?
Oh, you're so welcome. I am Spencer and I'm running to be association president.
Why are you running to be association president?
Because there is so much good stuff around this university, but so much stuff that could be better as well. And I'm really passionate about making changes and about finding out about what the things are that affect students, what the problems are that students are having, and finding solutions for those problems quickly and easily, and incorporating students into those discussions instead of having things drag on for ages.
Why are you qualified to be association president?
Well, I have interacted with so many societies and sports clubs and subcommittees throughout the university, so I've got a really broad knowledge of quite a lot of the university processes and how things work, and far reach into the student community. And that knowledge gives me the ability to see things from a different perspective and incorporate student views into the things that I'm doing, because I know where to find students and how to reach out to students. But in the past, I've also been secretary of the entertainment crew in the union, who organize all of the amazing events and stuff that we normally have when there's no pandemic going on. So that's like a massive role, lots of organization necessary to be the secretary of events. So that gave me a great lot of experience for this. But I've also been the senior student of Macintosh Hall, and that is a massive role to take on as a volunteer. And I published the report from my term as senior student in the manifesto, and just the amount of stuff that I achieved in that role within Macintosh was way more than the things that predecessor had achieved. And I had an incredible committee that I was leading, and we managed to get a lot of stuff done. I think that's what sets me apart. I'm a candidate that gets stuff done when I'm in the roles to do stuff. And I was actually the senior student who tabled the laundry motion during my time as senior student, and actually got residential and business services to the table and to agree to engage with students to improve the laundry services. And after my term ended, I'm so thankful that the Accommodation Subcommittee and Jamie Rodney, who took over as association president back then, continued that drive and actually did the engaging with RBS to make the changes. But yeah, that started in a senior student meeting. Yeah, so that's why I'm qualified. We get stuff done. Yes, it's fun.
Yes, free wash station, very, very beneficial. You brought up predecessors. I was wondering, what is one thing that you think your predecessor and student association president did really well, and what is one thing that you think they have sort of managed poorly this term, or predecessors?
That's an amazing question. So I think this current year has been a very different one, and I think Dan ought to receive credit for that, because being association president during a pandemic is not an easy task. And I think some of the stuff that he's done that's been amazing is increasing the amount of engagement between the principal's office and the association, especially in terms of communication with students, sort of reviewing the principal's emails and making them more succinct and easy to digest for students, because that's something that I want to continue. That communication with students is really lacking, and letting us know what's going on, what's being worked on, and how we can get involved with the changes that are currently being made. So I think that's a fantastic thing. One of the areas where I think my predecessor has been lacking a little bit is being open and actively engaging with students, going out into different spheres of the student body and getting feedback directly from students, instead of just sending an email out and being like, hey, get in touch with me for whatever you want, and actually attending society meetings and events and going out and fetching that feedback from students, which is what I want to do.
I see. And kind of on that engagement directly with students, I think that for some people, many current students included, they feel that St. Andrews has become a place that's not just elite, but also has a spirit of elitism in it. And I was kind of wondering if this is a view that you would agree with, and if so, what would you do to enact change to combat it?
Yes, no, it's for sure a big issue that our university struggles with. And the credit to the university, they're putting a lot of effort into widening access and participation. I've been involved with a lot of those initiatives, tutoring in the community, and really encouraging students from lower income backgrounds and to engage with the university, to send in applications to the university, being like, hey, we will recognize these circumstances. So credit to them for that. But the problem that really, I think, exists within St. Andrews is after students get here, because it doesn't help you get those students into the university, but you don't support them while they're here. If accommodation is too expensive for students from those backgrounds to afford, and there isn't enough financial assistance for those students, they're not going to be able to live here. And if society events and sports clubs are way overpriced for students to be able to make use of them and go to them, then you're excluding students from that part of the student experience. So then why would they want to come here? And those are the sorts of like small things that need to change, or not small things. I mean, accommodation is a massive problem, both private and in the university life. But yeah, just making sure that students are supported after they come to St. Andrews and not just getting their foot in the door, because that's meaningless. And another way that I think we can break that sort of culture of elitism is by not only going and seeking students in affluent countries. I think it's important to go to a wide array of countries around the world, including countries in the global south, in order to get students from different backgrounds into the university and to bring different perspectives into the student body. Because currently the admissions office doesn't actively recruit in those countries. They use alumni, if anything. Whereas in affluent countries like the United States, they actually send admissions officers, multiple admissions officers, to go and work in those different places and engage with students and tell them why St. Andrews is for them. So I think St. Andrews should be for everyone. If you have the grades to get in here, and you have something to contribute, and not only to the university but to society in general, I think we should be able to cultivate that and bring those students in.
Yeah. Okay. So when you mentioned the Global South, I know you mentioned that specifically in your manifesto, and I was kind of wondering, for people who might not be familiar with the term, what Global South represents, could you explain a little bit more about what it means, what areas fall underneath it, and maybe just a little bit more about why there hasn't been recruitment specific to those areas from St. Andrews in the past?
Yeah, so I mean, Global South has varying definitions, and I'm not a fan of really big, complicated terms. So just to keep things as easily accessible as possible, I'll say the countries that have previously been disadvantaged by things like colonialism, and countries who have power and have taken advantage of other countries. Generally, that's a lot of the countries in the Global South. Also countries who often get termed, again, by the countries with the most wealth as developing, or needing to be built up, like third world countries, that sort of thing. A lot of those countries fall within the Global South, and generally it's countries in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, in places that the university really doesn't reach out to all that much. Although there are exceptions within those spheres. Like I know our university does do a lot of recruitment in countries like China, for example. So I wouldn't say the global south is necessarily like a straight line across the world map and like all the countries below this point. That's definitely not what it's about. If you are interested in finding out about like the more nitty-gritty definition of that, a really good term to go and Google and look at is the term subaltern, but not only in the sense of the military, because that's one definition, but rather in the sense of like international relations and what that looks at. That's a good one to go and have a look at to clarify that. But yeah, so just onto your second point about what or why the university might not currently be recruiting in those countries, I think it has a lot to do with perceptions of wealth and thinking that, well, the international student fees at St. Andrews are already so high. Why would we bother going out to these countries because the students there just won't be able to afford coming here? And I think that's a massive misconception because, yes, those are countries with generally lower global incomes, but there is also so much wealth disparity in those countries that there is a mix of students. There are students who could afford to come to St. Andrews, but there are also incredible students who couldn't afford to come to St. Andrews. And I think we should be targeting both of those groups in those countries. We have scholarships. If the best students for St. Andrews are in those countries, bring them over, let them come here.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for that description. I know it's a bit of an unfair question to ask because it's a term that doesn't really have a precisified definition, but thank you for expanding on that. Going back to a little bit of some of the experience that you said you have, I noticed in your manifesto that you said you helped shaped the 24/7 security and response team. And I was kind of wondering, is there anything else that you think still needs to be done with our security and response team? And what would you do as association president to make it better?
Yeah, so, I completely forgot that I included that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. The way that I helped shape that was through consultation with the senior students during my time in that office. And the people who were managing that project were incredible from the university perspective. They really took on so much of the feedback that we were giving them, telling them, listen, we need security all the time. We need students to be able to access resources and support at any time of the day, because students work at different times of the day. So if you're going home from a friend's house or from the library late at night, and you see something that's out of place, you should have a number to call. And we always had the out-of-hours service, but they weren't actively patrolling around the town. They were sitting in an office, and like it would take time for them to reach you and to actively get to you. So the security and response team is great in that they patrol around the town. They're there, they're looking out for students actively, and we can call on them at any point in time when we need them. A way that I think they can still be improved is by including well-being support on the team, or giving the security and response team well-being training so that they can support students who are having mental health crises, and not just sort of like safety issues. But I believe that's still in the works. I believe that has been spoken about. They are looking into it. So yeah, fantastic initiative. And currently, I'm not saying that that's not available. There are duty wardens who get contacted if there is a well-being issue, and they get brought in to assist in those sorts of situations. But it's another person that needs to be contacted, and it would be great if that person is already in the response vehicle there to assist.
Okay. Yeah. And you brought up well-being, which is a great transition because I was about to ask you about some of your student services stuff. I noticed that you said that you would push the university to hire LGBTQ plus specific counselors. I was wondering, why do you feel like that is an important thing to push the university on? And what benefits do you think it would have for our student population?
Yeah, so absolutely, I'm so in favor of hiring LGBTQIA plus counselors. But that said, I don't want that to be the reason that they're hired. People need to be hired for student services because they are qualified to assist our students. That should be the top priority. If they're part of a minority group or a group that has specific issues like LGBTQIA students, then that's a massive bonus on top of that. What I would really love to see is for individuals within student services who are comfortable with it to be advertised as being LGBT, part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think it just makes it so much easier to open up to someone who has had the experiences that you've had. And it stops you from having to really just explain the background behind everything you say. Like, if you're not part of the community, you might not know what Grindr is, for example. So instead of talking about some like relationship issue that you have with someone on Grindr, you might first need to experience the whole concept of Grindr, explain the whole concept of Grindr to someone. Sorry, that was a terrible example.
No, I got what you mean. Don't worry, don't worry.
But more than just signposting the members of staff who are part of the community, also giving specific training to, I mean, hopefully all members of staff on LGBTQIA plus experiences and problems that the community faces in order to equip everyone so that like you don't necessarily need to wait for the one or two people who are part of the community to have an available space to assist you, but actually have someone from the community train the other staff members to enable them to assist those students as well. Because different students have different problems. And I think it's time that we really recognize that, and specifically the LGBTQIA plus community, because, I mean, if you're marginalized and receive still hatred and backlash, and there's laws being enacted against your human rights, then like you're going to be struggling. So we need to be supporting all those types of students.
Yeah. Within the student services section of your manifesto as well, I noticed that you made like specific mention of the note-taking procedure that gets done by student services. And kind of what you said was something that I'd never known before. And I was wondering if you would mind like explaining how it works and why, and because of that, why you feel like there sort of needs to be changes made to the system.
Yeah, so currently, just about every time that you interact with student services, they put a little note on your profile of what happened and sort of anything that the counselor just wants to note down. And this is whether you're interacting with an assistant warden or a head warden in halls, or whether you're interacting with counselors in student services themselves. And I really think it's unfair for them not to publish that really widely, because if you're talking to someone about the most intimate trauma that you've ever experienced in your life, and you later find out that the warden in your hall who you live with and have breakfast with has access to those notes, if they like type in your name and go access to your profile, they can see what's been noted there. And I don't think that's right. I think we should have control over that personal information that we are sharing, because it is so intimate. And this is not because I think the people in student services aren't trustworthy or are bad, but it's about giving us the authority over our information and where that goes and who is able to read these stories that we do share. And just being upfront about it. It is really helpful if you have had repeated interactions with student services for them to be able to look at the history and say, like, look, this person first came to us back in 2017 with this issue. They've been seeing us repeatedly. It hasn't gotten better. What can we do to improve this? So it helps them to have some checks and balances. It helps them to also see what's been done before and like what they shouldn't be trying again because it hasn't worked, and to take things from there. But it also helps like survivors, for example, if survivors share their story with a counselor, that's a really difficult experience because you relive that whole like trauma in that moment, and having the ability to say to student services, you know what, I'm going to be speaking to that person next because you've referred me to them. So would you please just share these notes, take these notes down, share these notes with that person so that I don't have to retell this whole story. So I think the note-taking is a good thing to have, but I think we should be able to decide what notes get taken and who has access to those notes.
So really an emphasis on student control about their experience.
Yes.
Moving on to the more to the accommodation section, I think that it's the understatement of the year to say that accommodation is an issue within St. Andrews. And I was kind of wondering, what do you think sets your ideas on accommodation apart in the sense of what makes them more likely to work? And what do you think your approach to the issues of accommodation that we currently face are?
Yeah, so I'll start with the issues and then my specific approach. So the issues that we face are, it's expensive. University accommodation has become dramatically more expensive over recent years. I mean, the prices of university accommodation, even just during my time, have increased like out of line with inflation, like more than inflation has increased. And I think that's unacceptable. For the university to be putting up prices of accommodation so much, and then also building more expensive halls. So yes, they're replacing Albany, but they still took the decision to add halls that are on the higher tier of accommodation pricing instead of adding affordable halls before knocking down the affordable halls that we already had, like Albany. So it's expensive. In terms of private accommodation, I think we've all heard it before, the HMO licenses that Fife Council are withholding. So there's a lot of properties in the town that have 3 or 4 bedrooms, but only 2 of the bedrooms can be used because the landlords aren't able to get HMO licenses from Fife Council. Therefore, they need to charge more for that property because you can only rent 2 of the 4 rooms, which is understandable. So I really want to push let me start that sentence again. I really want to keep up the momentum and push for the things that previous association presidents have already been pushing for, like banning the HMO licenses, because like in terms of how slowly things happen within politics, it's really necessary to keep up the pressure year after year, and things take time. Unfortunately. But you know what? I don't think we have time. And that's why I think my policies are set apart from the rest, because I think we need to take some more drastic action. I want to organize rent strikes in order to force down the prices of private accommodation. And I want to speak to the university about like capping the increases that they're able to put on the university accommodation, and also not allowing them to give students from low-income backgrounds places in halls that are the most expensive when they requested the least expensive options. So looking at that sort of thing, looking at how we can better support like students in halls, providing more accommodation bursaries. I know that's something that Dan has worked on a lot, is increasing the funding available for students, the hardship fund. I really want to continue that work. But yes, definitely organizing a rent strike so that we can get the prices down of accommodation in St. Andrews. And we need to do that collectively as a student body. But I think everyone will buy in, because why would you want to pay more than is perfectly acceptable? because we're one of the most expensive towns to live in terms of university accommodation in the country. So the country as in the UK. So I also want to reach out to other students' associations and universities and find out how they're keeping their university accommodation low, and maybe applying some of those policies and procedures to St Andrews, and looking where we can cut some expenditure that might be unnecessary, and how we can reduce the price of university accommodation, and not only capping the increases for future years, but reducing them retrospectively.
Yeah, I think I was reading through like the cash report that came out this year and was saying that St Andrews accommodation is actually more expensive than some universities in London,
Yes.
and obviously Edinburgh in that, which is ridiculous.
Crazy, because those cities have so much more to offer than St Andrews, like in terms of nightlife and socializing, in terms of just resources, the number of libraries that are available, the amount of accommodation that's on offer. It's ridiculous that we're being charged more than people in those cities that have a lot more to offer. Although I think the St Andrews student experience is still superior. That's it.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So I know we're running a little bit short of time, so I wanted to ask one final policy question, and then we'll move on to some of the more fun, quote unquote. I think talking about policy is fun, but some of the more fun.
I also agree.
I think something that we've actually seen quite a lot of action in the past year and a half is within the pronoun policy for professors and students. And I was kind of wondering, would you make any changes to the policy that is currently in place, and what those would be, and why those changes you feel are important or necessary?
Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, and you can correct me on this because it might have changed since the last time I looked, but it's strongly encouraged by the university for staff members to use pronouns in their communications with students, but it's not required as yet.
Yeah.
So I'd make it a requirement for staff members to include pronouns in their email signatures, and make sure that that's being communicated to students every step of the way, because every communication with students is important in order to allow students to feel comfortable expressing their own pronouns. It should just be a natural thing that we do, just starting off a communication with like, hey, I'm Spencer, my pronouns are dealer's choice, so whatever feels most comfortable for you. Or hey, I'm Spencer, my pronouns are he, him, his, like whatever. It really just takes a second. But improving on having it mandatory within communications, I would also make it mandatory for professors and lecturers to introduce themselves in tutorials and lectures, starting with their pronouns as well. This is how you address me. I'm Professor so-and-so. My pronouns are this. So making that the norm in in-person interactions, or not only in-person interactions, but like online tutorials and things, as well as in like written communication.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a single honors philosophy student, and I think I'm very fortunate that in the philosophy department, all of our professors and all of our tutors do that, which is really great. Well, I should say about 98% of them do that, which is really great. And it's been a really great change this semester as well, because they're putting them in the syllabus. So we know how to address emails.
Yeah, oh my word. I know the maths department, unfortunately, doesn't have that many professors who have taken it up yet. So I'm speaking from that perspective, where I'm like, I'm not seeing it. I want to be seeing it, please.
Okay. Yeah. So moving on to our like sort of second half of questions, are you a frog person or a bird person?
Oh, well, they're both cute, but frogs move really quickly, like, and they're really unexpected. Like, if you please don't go around touching frogs, please just let them be. But when I was younger and like playing around in the garden and like went to like, just like pin or stroke a frog, they would like jump away or like make a sudden movement, and that like I'm a nervous person, so I like jump. So I think I prefer birds for that. I also really enjoy bird watching and like taking pictures of birds. Really graceful and majestic, and so they have attitude. Like if you pick a fight with a bird, they're gonna come for you, and I love that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's really I love the bird watching in Scotland. Before I came here to start university, my aunt got me like a book about birds in Scotland, and I always like to like walk around when I'm outside, and I think I end up annoying my friends. But anyways, what would your ideal day/night out be in pre-COVID St. Andrews?
Ooh, so this is a very specific experience that I've had multiple times in the past, and it's been a blast every single time. So sometimes we get deadlines set for ridiculous hours on a Friday night. So usually in the past I've had deadlines for like 9 o'clock in the evening on Friday night, which I think should change. I don't think you should be setting deadlines outside of working hours, but that's a different issue.
Yes, as someone who has two 11:59 p.m. deadlines this Friday, I second that conclusion quite intensely.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. But anyway, so I would work until 9 p.m., finish, submit the deadline. I'm a perfectionist, so I really struggle to like stop working on things until they're submitted and the deadline has passed. So I'm one of those like 5 minutes before the deadline people. Sorry to say. We're working on the perfectionism thing, but it also is happening when you're like writing policies and engaging with students trying to get stuff right. But anyway, so then after the deadline submission, I would go to some sort of pre-event with my friends where we hang out, have a good time, get ready together, maybe like put on a little bit of glitter, do some fun dancing and stuff, and just have a good time like getting ready, and then heading to the bop afterwards. Man, oh man, it's cheesy, but I miss the bop so much. I've had some of my best memories in the bop because, I mean, as someone who doesn't drink, I still think the bop is such a good time for everyone because people just don't care about your dancing. So I can do my crazy dancing and make my body move in weird ways, and no one feels weird about it. They're like, yes, he's feeling it. So yeah, the bop.
Excellent. Okay, and our last question is a would you rather. So would you rather knock over your water bottle at the start of an exam, so you kind of have to sit there for 2 hours a little bit damp, or have a typo in the title of your dissertation, but only discover it after it's been turned in?
I am not a fan of. I was gonna say I'm not a fan of being wet, but I mean, let's go dissertation. We'll go dissertation.
Dissertation? Okay. Bold. I would have to agree. I think professors who take points off for spelling, I don't see it. Anyways, those are all of my questions.
You get the message. That's what we need.
Yes, especially for math. I think those are all of my questions. Thank you so much for answering them, and good luck with this upcoming week.
Thank you so much for taking the time and for asking amazing questions and like reading the manifesto. I know it's really long, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And thank you for the luck. We'll take it. We love it. And yeah, have an amazing week as well.
Thank you.